The Legend of Zelda universe is a vast and strange place, with timeline splits, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions. But where does everything fit in? We see a clear split at the end of Ocarina of Time, but what about Termina? What about Lorule? Where do they fit in? What is their place and purpose in the Zelda universe? And what about the Zelda Omniverse? To help me answer these existential questions, I've brought along a friend, Dr. Wily.
It is I, Dr. Wily, and I've brought my Zelda expertise to save us all.
In basically all of physics, explaining multiverses is easily one of the most confusing things, so it is more than a simple task to apply it to the Zelda universes. And I do actually mean universes. While this is common knowledge to larger Zelda fans, all of the main games take place in one of 3 universes on a timeline. Though they were originally one, the ending events of Ocarina of Time caused a split.
When Link pulls the Master Sword from its pedestal and is sealed for 7 years, he unintentionally lets Ganondorf enter the Sacred Realm and steal the Triforce of Power. Ganondorf then goes on to conquer Hyrule, but Link, who had awakened after 7 years as the Hero of Time, defeats him. Subsequently, Ganondorf is sealed in the Sacred Realm by the 7 Sages. As his tasks are done, Link is sent back in time by Princess Zelda to relive his lost years, and a child timeline is formed. An unspecified amount of time after being sealed, Ganondorf escapes the Sacred Realm and threatens Hyrule once again. No hero appears to stop him, since Link was sent back into the child timeline, and the gods are forced to flood Hyrule. Centuries later, the events of the Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass and the Spirit Tracks unfold.
In the child timeline, Link has been returned to his childhood after having defeated Ganon in the future of Ocarina of Time. In this timeline, Hyrule's relationship with Ganondorf changes, eventually leading to the events of Twilight Princess, though the details surrounding this are unclear. In the aforementioned interview with Aonuma, he states, "In the last scene of Ocarina of Time, Link and Zelda have a little talk, and as a consequence of that talk, their relationship with Ganon takes a whole new direction."
The Downfall timeline is an alternate continuity in which Link is defeated by Ganondorf during the final battle of Ocarina of Time. After this, Ganondorf obtains all the 3 pieces for the Triforce. Led by Princess Zelda, the people of Hyrule manage to seal Ganon and the Triforce in the Sacred Realm.
So neat. When playing Zelda, you are exploring a world within one of these 3 universes. But hang on, what about Termina in Majora's Mask? Link fell into an entirely different universe, did he not? One with similar people but a different landscape? And then, what about Lorule in A Link Between Worlds? So there are 5 universes? When did those split off?
And that's the question we're going to answer today. But first we need to understand how multiverses work. No simple task, but we'll make it as simple as possible. Just know that in reality it's way more complicated than we'll be giving off.
Let's look at Link. One day, Link wakes up and decides to have some cereal. He says as he grabs a box of Cuckoo Puffs. But what's this? Link has a decision to make. Whole or 2% Moo Moo Milk. Surely a strong hero such as he needs the added vitamins whole Moo Moo Milk provides. But since defeating Ganon, he needs to keep up his slender, sexy looks as a new celebrity. Ultimately, Link goes for the 2%, but little does he know that he inadvertently just created an entire extra universe. A universe where the only difference was his choice in bovine juice. Where he chose to have whole Moo Moo Milk in his cereal today.
Yes, literally every choice you make causes another universe to form, wherein the only difference is the outcome of that decision. And really, every minor difference in anything creates another universe. Did a butterfly flap its wings? Or did it wait another extra millisecond to do so? Those differences also create universes.
All in all, there are an infinite number of universes, all spawning off one another in what is known as the multiverse. From a distance, the multiverse could theoretically look like this, a Mandelbrot zoom, every point of light being a whole other universe. As time goes on, an infinite number of universes spawn off of every other universe, each with its own tiny deviation. But there are just as many that are completely different as there are those that are nearly identical. Infinity. And one small change far into the past could change absolutely everything in the future, as is the case with Lorule and Termina.
Let's start with the simpler Lorule. What is it? It's a parallel universe in which Link travels to and from repeatedly throughout the Link Between Worlds. The landscape is nearly identical to Hyrule, even the infrastructure is similar, although it's all in ruins. But being in ruins is a pretty big difference. What gives?
Well, let's look at the history of the Zelda Multiverse. First, there was one singularity of nothingness. Then the three goddesses, Din, Nehru, and Faeror, created the world along with the Triforce. After this, they left Hyrule, possibly even the entire universe, because they are deities and they can do whatever they dang please. Back to the Triforce though, this was the first decision to be made, thus there are different outcomes. To have the Triforce be upright as we normally see it, or for it to be upside down like in Lorule. From this point forward, everything was essentially the same, the events of Skyward Sword, Minish Cap, and Four Swords, and then the events of Ocarina of Time. But by now there was something different about Lorule. Something had changed. The Triforce was no more. Thus, an age of darkness began. Humanity was swallowed by shadow, and the world began to crumble and implode within a void of its own empty heart, as the people were driven into madness, and chaos took over the kingdom. Sagas of evil pulsated from the void.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
So where did the Triforce go? Well, prior to the events of A Link Between Worlds, Lorule was a stable world similar to Hyrule. However, Lorule suffered through its own era of chaos, similar to that of Hyrule, and the Lorulean royal family decided to destroy their Triforce to end the conflict. However, destroying the Triforce instead caused their kingdom to crumble and fall apart even more. This became so severe that the bottomless chasms divided Lorule into 3 major regions, with no way to travel between them by land. The citizens themselves had become unruly and left to fend for themselves from monsters that had overrun the land.
So basically, and surprise surprise, destroying the Triforce was a bad idea. And this led to all of the events in A Link Between Worlds. This also caused a new timeline split in the Lorule universe, similar to what happened at the end of Ocarina. The Triforce was destroyed, the Triforce was sealed, the Triforce fell into the hands of evil, etc. Infinite possibilities, which could lead to infinite outcomes.
Whoa. Let's start small. Keep it simple. How do multiverses even work? Why do we go to Lorule specifically and not a different universe where Link is reincarnated as something like a jelly, or a girl, or something in between, a jelly girl?
Well, it's all very complex, but let's put it like this. You have a bubble in a tub that is the Omniverse. That bubble expands and splits off into infinite other bubbles. Each bubble, of course, represents a universe. And each universe bubble could be of any size, from what we typically perceive as the size of the universe, down to the size of an entire universe being within the space of an atom. In the beginning, there were no bubbles until the 3 goddesses created one. This would be Hyrule, but how would they make the Triforce look? Would it be upright or upside down? Would it be golden or would it be black? This was the first decision ever in the universe, and thus there are multiple outcomes. All of the universes in the multiverse will spawn from this one, and thus there are an equal number of Hyrules and Lorules, both infinitely equal, perfectly parallel. Due to this perfect parallelity, traveling between the two is simple. Well, as simple as interdimensional travel can be. But why do we specifically travel to this Lorule? It could be simply because it is perfectly adjacent to the Hyrule universe in the Downfall timeline, like we see here. This would also mean, if we were to ever revisit Lorule while in this timeline, it would be the same Lorule. But if we were to visit Lorule in either of the other 2 timelines, it would be a different Lorule.
But on the contrary, Termina is much more difficult to travel to. Rather than having magical portals all over the place, there's a singular portal somewhere in the Lost Woods. But why is this? What makes it so complicated?
While Lorule is near perfectly adjacent, Termina is an offshoot. Heck, it's in the root word, terminal, a point of connection, an end or extremity of something. We could say that Termina is at the end of one of the infinite offshoots, meaning it is still connected to the child timeline universe, though distant. So travel is possible, but complicated.
But where and why did it split? Let's first look at the differences between Termina and Hyrule. We will start with the most obvious one, the landscape. The land is divided into 4 major sections: Woodfall, Snowhead Mountain, Great Bay and Ikana Valley. This was done long ago by the 4 giants, which are guardians and protectors of Termina. A long time prior to the events of Majeure's Mask, the 4 giants lived in harmony among the united people of Termina. In particular, they befriended one specific individual, a small imp. However, as the world grew, the 4 giants divided Termina into 4 regions, in which the 4 races of Termina would live, which would be guarded and watched over by the 4 giants as they slumbered. Before departing, they told the people that should any trouble or bad times befall them, they could call upon the giants with the Oath to Order.
Another major difference between Hyrule and Termina is that the goddesses and the Triforce are nowhere to be found. The only place where we see the Triforce is at the Stone Tower Temple and Ikana, where it is seen on pillars outside of Ikana, and on certain blocks inside the Stone Tower. The only real deities we see in Termina are the 4 giants, Majeure, and the Fierce deity, but no Din, Nehru, and Faeror. But why? Well, we can see that the Triforce was once present in Termina by the depictions of the Triforce in Ikana, but what happened to the Triforce? Let's look at the Stone Tower Temple and Ikana itself, since it's the only place where we see a mention of the Triforce. The first place where the Triforce appears is on the moving stone blocks within the Stone Tower, depicted as being licked under the crotch of a sitting creature. Now hold on a second. This is certainly a sign of blasphemy towards the Triforce. Why would they do this? Overall, the goddesses are loved by the citizens, so what's caused this to happen? Well, in Termina they don't even mention the Golden Goddesses. The only deities mentioned in the history of Termina are the 4 giants, for example in the stories of Anju's grandmother or the Carnival of Time. There is one possible explanation for all of this which actually makes a lot of sense for the absence of the Triforce and some other events that occurred in Termina.
Termina is a parallel universe, and a parallel universe always has one big difference. The one in Termina compared to Hyrule could be that they don't worship the goddesses and the Triforce, at least not anymore. The Stone Tower could have been built by the ancients of Termina to persecute Din, Nehru and Faeror. One of the leading clues for this is the obscured appearance of the Triforce, as it appears on moving blocks within the tower, depicted as being licked under the crotch of a sitting creature. A motive suggested to be an expression of profanity, as a statement of rejecting the Triforce and the Golden Goddesses. It could have been that they even destroyed the Triforce. Another clue is that the structure has very advanced magic built into it, like the magic switch in the dungeon that turns everything upside down, and the fact that it's way too complicated to be built by man. The tower was raised to declare a war against the heavens, in contempt of the idea that the Golden Goddesses would be their true creators. It also relies on the possible event that the goddesses could have made their presence known to the ancient royal family of Ikana, as they had done for the royal family of Hyrule, in conjunction with the fact that the people of Termina had already proclaimed the 4 giants as their guardian deities and creators of the 4 worlds. It is suggested that the goddesses would have been rejected in favor of the 4 giants, while also provoking a rage for posing as what would have been perceived as blasphemy. It would make a lot of sense for the people of Termina to favor the 4 giants, since they are physical gods which are seen in history and actively help out Termina. Especially since destroying the Triforce would doom the land just like Lorule, but Termina has the 4 giants to hold it all together. This is because they already had the power to divide the land into 4 regions, as told by Anju's mother in her stories, so holding the world together would be simple, whereas the Golden Goddesses are never ever seen or heard about by the citizens.
One other benefit of the 4 giants is that there would be no war over the Triforce, and this in turn would mean no Ganondorf. After all, Demise, who would later reincarnate himself as Ganondorf, came to Hyrule to claim the Triforce for himself. But if there was no Triforce to be claimed, then Demise would have no reason to attack Hyrule, or in this case, Termina. So this would mean that multiple events like the Civil War and the Era of Chaos, which were time periods filled with death and despair, would have never happened. This is something we can see in Termina. The land is more technologically advanced than contemporary Hyrule, possessing modern hallmarks such as rock bands, motorboats, clocks, tourist shops, lotteries, pictography, and even plans for space travel. This is because there haven't been a lot of wars that could have interrupted the progress of technology and the civilizations itself. Another argument for this is the fact that Koume and Kotake are not serving Ganondorf, but instead own a potion shop and a boat cruise at the Swamp Tourist Center. Koume and Kotake are known as Twin Rova and are usually seen at Ganondorf's side as his surrogate mothers. And they are very loyal to their son's cause. They helped out Ganondorf in multiple games like Ocarina of Time and Oracle of Ages and Seasons. Now, without the presence of Demise, they are simply citizens.
But the fact that the populace blasphemed the goddesses can also have some side effects, like religious wars against foreign nations. An example of this is seen in Ikana. It could have been that the war with the Garo was a religious one. Things like this happened a lot throughout real-life history, for example the Crusades in the 10th to 12th century. So the reason why Termina is a parallel world of Hyrule is the fact that they eventually rejected the Triforce and the goddesses, and instead chose to worship the four giants, which in turn caused the land to split into 4 regions, thanks to the 4 giants. And with no Triforce around, there would be no reason for Demise to return as Ganondorf, and this would eliminate any war over the Triforce. So the place where the split most likely occurred and created Termina was at the point where they rejected the goddesses and the Triforce and accepted the 4 giants as their protectors. This would also mean that at the creation, or at least in some point of the history of Termina, the 4 giants came into the world and were accepted as their gods to be worshipped at events such as the Carnival of Time.
So, that explains both Termina and Lorule's splits in the timeline, and thus their creations as entirely new universes. So split histories, major events causing massive changes between the up-close universes and the multiverse, causing an infinite number of similar universes in each of their own category of the 3 main timelines, Lorule and Termina. This, altogether, becomes the Zelda Omniverse. How many possibilities are there?
Well, infinite.
And how many more universes will we explore in the future? We've visited a parallel universe in the Child timeline and the Downfall timeline. Perhaps in the near future, a Zelda adventure will take us to another parallel universe in the Adult timeline. And as Zelda games continue to be made, know that technically, every minor difference in the way we play these games is canon in the overall Omniverse. Thank you for watching, and if you like these kinds of Zelda videos, then you should check out my pal Dr. Wily's channel over here.
And be sure to subscribe to Gnoggin for more thought-provoking videos, and keep on being awesome.
Bye.